Welcome back. Now, who doesn't love a ranking video? Everybody does. I've been wanting to do this one for a while. This is obviously just the driver lineups. So not the cars, not the history, not any of the other stuff. This is just the pairing and how far do I think they can go. Kind of how I alluded to my issues with some teams. If they get really good, have they got the drivers to back it up? This is going to sort that one out. This is definitive. This is fact. I don't want to hear any arguments. Absolutely. Right, let's go. Number 10, unsurprisingly, Haas. They got Mick Schumacher. Nikita Mazepin, it's not been announced yet, but he's out. He's done because of his Russian ties. So you're going to get Pietro Fittipaldi. He's 25 years old. He raced twice in Formula One. I think it was the end of last year and the end of 2020 as well at Bahrain. He's only raced twice. He's 25 years old. He's young. He's not as young as Schumacher. He's only 22. But as far as experience, I mean, they're the least experienced on the grid in what has been the last 2 years the worst car, which doesn't matter for this ranking. But in terms of two drivers, right this minute now, today, they're the weakest two for me. The only way is up for them, and let's hope that all their 2021 development will help them be better. So obviously the car does help. Obviously the driver talent is one thing, but you've got to be in a decent car to experience new things and to grow. So those two I'm putting at number 10. I don't think you're going to get any arguments from anyone there. Number 9, I'm going with Williams. Now, Alex Albon and Nicholas Latifi, they're kind of, I mean, Albon, it's hard to know how good Albon really is, because he had the Red Bull seat. Wasn't very good there. Was always kind of nervous, never really got on top of the car. Ended up getting booted out at the end of 2020 for Sergio Perez. So he didn't race in Formula 1 last year, took the year off. It was always kind of about, now he's back in at Williams, which is the right move for him, because he did get, because he was in the Red Bull Junior program, he's at Toro Rosso at the time, AlphaTauri. And then he just got promoted into the Red Bull seat because Gasly went out. So Red Bull kind of making knee-jerk reactions to people not being as good as Max Verstappen, which is like shock horror. So Albon went in there, it was too soon, didn't do well, got booted out. Now he's kind of back at a level where he can actually grow. So I'm interested to see, because the Williams car in testing was really good. We put a lot of laps on the board anyway. So they're actually my surprise team for the year. I don't know what kind of surprise you're going to get, but I think they're, like, watch out for Williams, because they got two drivers. Latifi, who's been in Formula 1 for 2 or 3 years now. I mean, they've both got the same amount of experience. Obviously, Albon had a couple of podiums with Red Bull. It's solid. It's like they're young-ish, mid-20s. They're young-ish. It's their time to kind of like stamp their... If they're going to have any kind of career in Formula 1, it's going to start from what they're doing this season, and I guess next season, if that's how the season goes. Number 8. Now, forgetting about testing, like I mentioned about testing, because obviously Alfa Romeo have had a terrible test, but pure driver lineup, I'm going with them at number 8. Valtteri Bottas, 179 races, 67 podiums, and 10 wins. Like he's been there and done it. He's nowhere near his outward, past his prime, should we say. He's nowhere near that. He's still pretty good. Obviously, he was up against Hamilton, so he's not going to have a chance there. But putting him in there, he's like a way, way better version of Raikkonen, essentially. So they had Raikkonen for the last couple of years. They were doing their thing. Now, Bottas is a little bit quicker. He's got a lot more to prove. I have high hopes for them. And Guan Yu Zhou, 22-year-old, rookie, brand new to Formula 1. Absolutely no idea how he's going to do. He came third, I think, in F2 last year. So he wasn't like the champ of F2. The champ of F2 is not even in Formula 1. So he's kind of unheralded. People talk about him being a pay driver, so the money's got him into Formula 1 rather than talent. Let's see. I mean, Alfa Romeo, apart from the fact they're terrible at testing, they had a shocking test. I was quite excited about them, but I'm not so much anymore, given how their car can't do, 20 laps. I mean, I think Bottas did like 2 laps one of the days or something. So they're in a bit of trouble, but their drivers, as far as like going forward for the next 3 to 5 years, are in quite good shape, I would say. But yeah, we move. Number 7, AlphaTauri. Now, the reason why AlphaTauri are this low, despite Gasly being one of the best drivers on the grid, is Yuki Tsunoda. Tsunoda is in crunch time now. If he has another season like he did last year, he won't be in Formula 1 for 2023 for sure. Gasly lit the world on fire last year. he's coming towards, he's 26 now, he's getting on, he's kind of getting towards, he's not a young rookie anymore. He has stamped his authority on AlphaTauri, and now I think this is going to be his year to push towards, I think forget about Red Bull. I think he needs to look at, where it depends on what Hamilton does, what maybe Ferrari, but depending on what happens around everybody else, McLaren, there's always a chance, because a lot of people's contracts are up the end of next year, the end of this coming year. So there's a chance that if you do a really good season, especially if Pierre has a good season, like he did last year, if he has 2 good years in a row, off he goes. And he should be at one of the top teams. He deserves to get back there after having a bad time at Red Bull. Then he got jumped out, like I said, for Albon, he got jumped out. So all that musical chairs needs to stop for Pierre Gasly. He's won a race. I have high hopes for him. I don't know how good the AlphaTauri is going to be. If the Red Bull is good, the AlphaTauri is going to be at least somewhere near, because they have a lot of the same architecture. So we'll see. Number 6, Aston Martin. Now, my personal affinity for my boy Sebastian Vettel probably pushes this quite high, because Stroll, as far as drivers, as far as ability goes, Stroll might be in the bottom 4 or 5, maybe bottom 5, just because of what he's done. He's solid. He is solid. He's not prone to mistakes. He's just solid, but he just isn't spectacular. But he is only 23, and he's at I only realised this when I did these stats the other day. 101 races, Lance Stroll. Like he's had more Formula 1 races than Pierre Gasly, more than Lando Norris, more than Lance Stroll has had more races than Charles Leclerc. So, which is good and bad. I mean, bear in mind he's only 23. That is good for him. He's had a lot of experience, a couple of podiums. Aston Martin may or may not be very good. Who knows? They're struggling with that porpoising thing that all the cars are struggling with in testing with their car. Does the bouncy stuff. Basically because the ground effects put them down to the ground. And then there's a fault where it basically pushes it back up again, and they're just bouncing along like a porpoise. It's comedic, but they'll figure it out by Bahrain, I'm sure. So I'm putting them at 6. Vettel he's still good, but he's not great. And I love the guy, so we'll see how they can push on. But if they get a good car, Vettel is still sharp. Like if you give Vettel a very good car, he will be very good. So out of those bottom 4 or bottom 5 even, if you gave these guys good cars, I fancy these 2 to do the best with those good cars. So that's basically how I'm basing this ranking. Number 5, Alpine, with El Plan, Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon. They had a good season last year. Alonso is proving he's obviously still very good at the top level somewhere. If you give Alonso a very, very good car, it could be a problem. More so than Vettel. So Vettel is still sharp. Even though Alonso is 40 years old, Alonso is desperate to get another world championship. So I don't think Vettel is desperate to get another world championship, mainly because he's got 4. But I think Alonso is up there in terms of the top guys, in terms of desire. So he's definitely going to be one that you'd be like, yeah, he could be a problem. If Alpine have a very good car, which they did some laps, they did quite a few laps, and they had some good times. But you know, the bar. That's why I'm not really going to recap the Barca test too much, because it's just who knows what the people are doing. Obviously, lap count is good, and they had a good lap count, but other than that, it's hard to really say. Number 4, we're at the big 4 now. This is basically where the list is. I mean, that the other 6 are like, everyone should have that ranking in some kind of order, with Haas probably at the bottom and maybe Alpine at 5. The top 4 is where it's going to define itself, and this is where I'm going to kind of explain why I've ranked these guys, where I've ranked them. Number 4, I've gone with McLaren. Now, the reason being, if you have Max Verstappen in your team or Lewis Hamilton in your team, instantly your team is going to be at the front. So like those two are out of the way, and then for me it was a case of out of the 2 teams remaining, who do I trust to continually deliver results at the top level? And I feel like Ricciardo has struggled in McLaren. He picked it up a bit, but he hasn't really been that guy at McLaren. When the McLaren car was good in the first half of the year, he did win the race. Granted, obviously Verstappen and Hamilton crashed out, but he did win that race kind of on merit anyway at Monza. And Norris had his chance in Russia and self-imploded. And he's had, he's kind of close. Norris is close. I wouldn't put Norris above Ferrari just because Leclerc's won races and the way Ferrari finished the year. And I can't put them above Mercedes because Mercedes, and I can't put them up above a team that has Max Verstappen in it. So just by default, I mean, though these four top teams are by far the best four teams, and they could all win world championships, I think. But out of the four, I trust McLaren the least. And this may well come and bite me because they've got a quick car in testing, but that's not the point. The car is not the point. It's the two drivers, and I just don't trust fully Norris and or Ricciardo to really challenge the whole way, you know, as much as I trust the other three. So it is close. These four teams are all like very, very close, 6-1 between all of them. Number 3, I've gone with Red Bull, and like I said before, that's only because of Max Verstappen. Because Max Verstappen is what? He's a world champion, arguably the best driver in the grid. You know, you could definitely make that case. But Perez obviously brings that way down. Perez, I would put behind. If I had a team, you said, okay, you can have one driver. I'd probably put Perez behind most of these guys in the bottom 10 for sure. So Verstappen obviously brings this along, even if his car isn't as good like 29. Well, his whole career really. I've been watching the 2015 season review, and he's still putting it P7, P8 in the Toro Rosso. So he can do things with the car that a lot of people, most of these guys, everyone apart from Hamilton, that can do. So can't do rather. So for me, Verstappen, they have to go at minimum 3. And the reason why I can't put them in the top 2 is because of aggregate between the two teammates. I just can't put Perez, you know, if you aggregate them together, I just don't rate them as a duo. Verstappen I rate as the best driver, top 2 drivers. But as a duo, I give the edge slightly to the other two teams. Other two teams, starting with number 2, Ferrari. Now, as I've explained, hopefully it's making sense because I feel like sometimes I might contradict myself somewhere. But in terms of right now and going forward, Leclerc and Sainz are more talented drivers than Norris and Ricciardo. So as a duo. And it was weird because I'm linking Ferrari and McLaren together. But because of Verstappen's excellence and Perez's not so excellent, that they split the two. And I'm really struggling to, like, every time I say it, it sounds weird. But Ferrari as a duo, I mean, Leclerc, I said this when I did my top 10 drivers of last year. Give Leclerc a sniff of competitiveness, a sniff of a chance of a championship, and watch how the whole narrative around him will change. Like, watch this. And I'm this isn't a criticism, but he's kind of seen as like a nice dude, very well liked. Trust me, when the temperature goes up, he will turn savage, and in a good way. And he's super competitive. And back when he had the really quick car, 2018, I think it was 2018 or 19, when he was just he came out of the gates firing. He basically sent Vettel off to Aston Martin. That's basically how good he was. He's only won 2 races, which I find incredible. Like, he's only won 2 Formula 1 races, and one of them was that Monza race, and I'm pretty sure the other one was that Spa race when his friend died. So, like, in terms of actually winning races, he hasn't done it. And his teammate, by the way, Carlos Sainz, has not won any races. So, well, I'm kind of comparing all these different guys. You've got Perez has won 2, Ricciardo's won 8, Norris has won 0. If we're just going on experience and race wins, obviously Red Bull have 22 wins between them. McLaren have 8, Ferrari have 2. So Ferrari, in terms of the two drivers getting the job done, they fall down massively. But in terms of if you give them the right car, I mean, Ferrari obviously have had most of those stats are based on the last couple of years, which they don't have. I mean, Sainz has only been in a Ferrari 1 year. Leclerc's been in a terrible Ferrari for 2 years. So that's why. And obviously, Norris hasn't won a race yet. Ricciardo won all his races with, 7 of his races with Red Bull. It is as close as I'm making it out, basically, and as confusing because I'm trying to justify why I'm putting certain drivers. But like I said, gun to my head, if you said to me, right, I can have any pairing with the best car, like, as hard as it would be to leave Verstappen out, I'd want Leclerc and Sainz as a pairing, like, for sure. So I'm going with them. Number 1, unsurprisingly, is Mercedes. I don't think anyone, I think if you asked everybody, the whole F1 community, it will be Mercedes and Ferrari pairings that will be 1 and 2. And it depends on who you like more. And if you're unbiased, you're probably say, okay, cool, who's got the best drivers in there? Who's won more? Who's likely to... People want Ferrari to... And I kind of low-key want them to be really good as well. People really want Ferrari to be really good. So they're going to push that narrative that the Leclerc and Sainz are the best pairing. But I think in terms of if you're comparing Ferrari to Mercedes, I mean, Russell and Sainz. I mean, Sainz is definitely more experienced than Russell, obviously. He's had more races. He's a little bit older. He's had more podiums. He's been close for longer. And the only caveat I would say, and I'm open to swapping those two around, is that Russell hasn't been at the front. Apart from that one time in Sakir when he stepped in for Hamilton. But he had no pressure on. He technically had quite a lot of pressure because he was expected to do really well. But he had one race, not been at the front. He's never been Lewis Hamilton's teammate. He's never had to race Lewis Hamilton as a teammate. So this does have the recipe to implode the Mercedes pairing for sure. Because Hamilton's motivation won't be in question for sure because of what happened last year. And he's going to be, there's probably a good thing in a way that he went. So if they're going to lose the championship, if you lose it in that way, the motivation stays. Because I think if Hamilton had won the championship, you wouldn't probably get that motivated this year, especially with Russell coming in. And it's not as good. So I'm putting for sure Mercedes at the front because of how motivated Hamilton's going to be more motivated than last year to win. And we saw what happened last year. We're going to get like end of season Hamilton for the whole year, which is dangerous. Russell has a point to prove. He's under a lot of pressure, but he has a point to prove. And he's super quick. I mean, Russell, Sainz, Leclerc. I mean, you obviously have Verstappen and Hamilton. And most people would have Russell, Sainz, Leclerc, maybe Norris in that group behind. And they're all kind of in a line. Maybe Gasly, Ricciardo. They're all kind of in that group behind. But George Russell it's definitely time for him. I mean, I'm putting him at the top. But you could easily make an argument that Ferrari be, as a pairing, stronger. You couldn't say McLaren had a stronger partnership than Mercedes and Red Bull. It's the same. And Perez is probably more solid than Russell right now. He's more experienced. And you could argue that Verstappen's better than Hamilton. So it's all basically, this whole list is based on, I think, with a view to next year and the next couple of years, if the cars are as close as they are, which drivers are going to make the difference? And I think I've named a couple of them who are likely to, either through motivation or through talent or through experience or whatever, new fresh start. I think some of these guys have the ability to make a difference. And I think if you turn everything up to 10 and everybody at their best, I think that's when you would see the Red Bull pairing kind of fall down a little bit. Ricciardo, we've seen his best. Norris at his best is quick, but is he as good as Leclerc at his best? I don't think so. Sainz, Hamilton, I think realistically, if you turn everyone to 10, that this list makes more sense. Mercedes at 10, Hamilton, Russell, forget about it. Number 2, Leclerc, Sainz, I'd be happy putting them to. Number 3, I think Verstappen would drag Perez along and he'd be solid enough to be a number 2. Norris and Ricciardo don't have a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 ability at the minute, I don't think. And then, everyone else is definitely a long way behind. So turn it up to 10, this list makes sense. That's what I would say. Plenty more to come. Plenty more to come. We've got some fun videos to drop. And obviously, next week, pre-season testing for real. So we're going to see timing. We're going to see drivers, how they're actually moving on track, which is going to be amazing. Pre-season testing, Drive to Survive. Going to binge watch that in one day. Probably do a little reaction to that. I can't wait to see what they've put. I can't wait to see what they're putting out. That trailer looked crazy. But yeah. Subscribe if you haven't already. If you're just new to this video, new to this channel, welcome. Subscribe, like it, tell your mates, and there's going to be plenty more coming.